Okay, so let me bring you up to speed. I didn't like how my tests were progressing. I was completely, it was getting quite cumbersome to maintain. I'm sure, as you noticed, just a lot of redundant and repetitive code. I'm still knee deep or neck deep into all of this, but I've been spending a bit of time refactoring. And just to kind of give you up to speed, we're still working within our tests here for Ledger. But what we have is I have gone back and created a bunch of helper methods to essentially clean it up. So where I have, for example, one working individual test, but what we have instead is several helpers assisting along the way. So with a new wallet and some new, this is not totally complete, but I have here where I have a helper just to create a ledger and one to create the entry, one to modify the entry, another to close the ledger. And so what you can see is I'm experimenting with the minting inside of the handle create ledger helper. And so I've learned a lot of things along the way. You know, the seed inference with anchors seeds equal true really does simplify a lot of things, and I'll touch on this more. But you can see how my create ledger method essentially can be reduced to just passing the authority account. Even though in my validation struct I have the mint and the ledger and the token account and whatnot, I can really simplify and reduce the number of accounts needed because, well, let's see, if I show the create ledger, here's the validation struct, and it has all these accounts, but Anchor, because we take the time to build up this validation struct, Anchor can help us out and we don't have to send as much. And another big update that I did that I've been experimenting with that I have successfully working is that I changed the token account to also be a PDA. So previously I was using a Keypair, where I was generating a new Keypair from the client and passing that in, and then you had this Ledger token account was using just kind of your standard Keypair. Well, kind of continuing on what I learned with the Mint and using a PDA for the Mint account, I went ahead and tested it out for a PDA for a token account. And sure enough, it works. It works just the same as you would expect. You give it some seeds, it will derive a bump. You set the token account just as I had it previously. The mint on this token account is going to be the same mint, which is now our new PDA, DApp token mint. And the token account authority is getting set not to any sort of user wallet, but the ledger itself, which is also a PDA. So that is another big change that I went through and updated. But again, Anchor's seed inference feature, super helpful. It reduces the amount of actual accounts that you need to send over. And a lot of them, because the mint is a PDA, it can be derived. The ledger is a PDA, can be derived. And now the token account is also a PDA. So it can also be derived. So I'll go into this a little bit more on the other examples, but I had to do some reworking and refactoring of the code. But back to my testing, I have a scenario where I have all these nice helpers. After we go through and we create the ledger, I'm running my chai validation, assertions here. And then I have a question of like, okay, well, do I mint supply inside or do I do it back to back, just like I did here. So previously I had this, where it was, I would create a mint, I would first create the ledger, and then I would mint the supply. But then, to kind of to integrate this a little bit more, I decided, well, what if I, inside of my handle create ledger, part of the expectation is to also mint supply if the ledger is successfully created. And that was kind of a debate. Do I combine my validation structs, or do I keep them separate? Up to now, they are still separate. And this is just a good process of me experimenting. What are the pros and cons of keeping them separate? Or do I just say, screw it, put them all together and consolidate into one create ledger instruction and validation struct that also does our CPI mint to instruction? Right now they are separate, but this is kind of, as I'm going through my testing, and so far the easy things are working. But when I get into the handle mint DApp token supply, so this is just minting supply every time a new ledger, I'm encountering a couple of issues where I'm like, I have to keep track of total mint counts. Like if I'm really wanting to restrict a single user from basically creating as many ledgers as possible, and if I have it where I mint token supply every time they create a ledger, then what's the limit? How do you restrict that from just minting and draining all of the token supply? That would be stupid, but you build it, they could totally do that. So currently I'm encountering my first little, this becomes a little bit of a problem, because I want to also, part of my validation, verifying that after I mint supply, I used to, or I did previously, have some checking values of like, okay, does my total DApp token, DApp mint supply, does that align, match after minting new supply? Just making sure that all the accounts are getting updated correctly and the numbers are updating correctly. Well, to keep track of the mint, I kind of have to keep track of total ledgers that are created as well, if I'm doing this kind of one-to-one create a ledger, mint supply. And then it gets even more complicated when I want to verify the users or the authorities' wallet token account as well. If they've created 3 ledgers, then they have been minted to 3 times. So therefore, if you're kind of keeping track of the total amount of supply or token balance that they have in their wallet token account, associated token account, then that corresponds with the number of ledgers. Well, how do you keep track of the number of ledgers by the number of, per user? Well, without a kind of a high level DApp, token manager, data account where I'm keeping track of, and I'm, keeping track of total mint count or total ledger count based off the user, et cetera, this particular part in my test starts to get a little bit more challenging, because this means that I need to now, add some additional client side state where I've got, some new variables like total mint count, and maybe have an object for, okay, this represents a user, and every time they create a new ledger, then the total number of ledgers that they've created increments, and also the total mint count increments, et cetera. So all of this is to say, that's my challenge. And what I'm dealing with now is, maybe I was onto something with this, doing a high level DApp account, DApp token manager account, or even adding a profile account, something similar that I've done in the past, where you start linking our PDAs together. So currently we're doing a little bit of that with our ledger, and our entries. So if I just do state and then entry, pull this up, in my entry, I have the ledger's pub key as a field, which is the ledger PDA. I also keep track of the ledger's running balance and whatnot, but it's this connecting the entry to a ledger is using this kind of PDA hashing to tie it all up. So this is making me believe that I may need to consider doing something like this for users, as well as even my dApp token to kind of keep track of all of the necessary fields and values. So stay tuned, but just that's for now. So let me show you in more detail what the issue could be. So if we have got this, my ledger test, if I have part of my testing is to verify that everything goes through. So part of this code is something to consider when my for these tests, okay? I want to make sure that whenever I create any sort of entry that the token account balances are update correctly, essentially. So the ledger's token account, which is now a PDA, as well as the authorities, the connected wallet, essentially, their token account also updates accordingly. Obviously, when we are doing the test, when this is more on the front end, keeping track of a user's token account balance will be different, because they will, the user, you can't stop them from transferring the tokens to a different wallet, for example. But for this isolated testing situation, I can at least, verify that they have, that whenever an entry is created on a ledger, that the token accounts do update accordingly. So keeping track of a user's, how much supply, how much token balance a user, a wallet should have in these tests, we can do that. In the front end, maybe a little trickier, but here we're just testing out the functionality. So if I look for, let me close down this window, and if I do, what do I have? I need the, trying to think, create entry. Yeah, let's do, okay, create entry. What I have, let's go back. Yeah, so state entry. So if I'm, one thing that I need to keep track of is like, okay, how many ledgers does this user have? How many ledgers have been created where the authority for the ledger, and I can do that too. Let's do state ledger, and we'll split that below. So we have two windows here. The ledger has an authority, which is the wallet. The entry also has an authority field, which is also the wallet, but it also has a ledger pub key field, okay? So if I want to know, without having any other data, like on-chain state accounts, right now I just have a ledger and an entry. I did experiment with the dApp token manager I talked about previously, and I may come back to that. But right now, that's all I have. So if I want to keep track of, if I want to try to like restrict the number of ledgers that a wallet can connect, and therefore the amount, like how many times I'll mint token supply to a particular wallet, then I need to keep track of how many ledgers that wallet has created. And the way I can do that is the ledger, again, has the authority pub key, the authority field. The first 8 bytes of data, as we discussed in previous videos for the front end, whenever we're applying filters, you can use the data size filter and the memory comparison filter. Because I'm able to have access to the Anchor program, I can do the account ledger. It already knows the space required, the data size of a ledger account, because, well, we have it all spelled out for us right here. You know, this is what we built up previously for defining the size of our account. So I don't really need to use the data size filter for this. However, I do need to specify the memory comparison. So I want to compare not the first 8 bytes, because that's the discriminator, but the next 32 bytes afterwards. So, you know, I'm going to actually change this. I'm going to do verify token account, and it is the owner of the token account, so that's fine. Okay. But in the ledger, it's actually, this is, I can make a point, this is the authority of the ledger, okay? Which is the wallet pub key. So I can do a ledgers by authority filter, and I compare, and it's going to offset at 8, and then compare the next 32 bytes, which is what the standard size is for a public key, okay? And then using the all, it's going to fetch and return all instances of this account type for the program, but we've thankfully added a filter to it, so it's not doing all ledgers, but just ledgers specific to this authority, to this wallet. Then I have this total ledgers. I mean, it's just, if I get that and then I get the length of that, so whatever that is. So if I just console log, yeah, thank you, Copilot. Then we have like the actual length of ledgers that are assigned to this wallet. What I have here is I'm making a comparison. So basically, I want to check that the token account that we're comparing here, which is the it's the token account pub key. Let me make sure I'm referring to, this should be, yeah, okay, so this is the authorities token account. I'm getting confused because there's a ledger token account for a second. So I want to make sure that the amount that is in the authority, the wallet token account, associated token account, is equal to the amount that we mint, which is kind of a set amount every time I mint. I've set it right now to be 10,000 tokens, times the number of ledgers that they have. So that's like, that should be what it equals, assuming that they haven't spent anything. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this is going to be damn hard, actually, because as soon as they create an entry, yeah, hang on. So this is my idea, but I'm talking out loud with you on this, and that's why we're working through like how, again, this is for my test. I just want to make sure that this thing, and I'm going to close down these, and I'll close down these because I don't think we need those anymore. But if I split this up and I scroll down, this is the kind of test that I was going to do. And the idea is, inside of my creating a ledger helper, I have, it does all this. It does the actual create ledger, sends that through, we sign it, we throw some chai expect assertion checks here. After all that gets through, then we do the handle mint supply. The idea is to add this inside. I jump to this helper. It accepts the wallet and the amount. Right now, it's just a default mint supply raw, which is 10,000, I think is what I've got it set. So every time we mint supply, it's going to hit this mint supply raw amount. We go through, we mint to the authorities token account, which is, here, but I want to do some checks. So I've already showed how we're kind of keeping track of total mints that we have done just as a global, but then we want to verify the total, the mint supply, which is how much has actually been minted total. So here's the Mint PDA, the default amount times total mint. So every time, this is regardless of, this should essentially, total mint count should, in theory, equal to the total number of ledgers created. Like it's a 1-to-1. However, the next part is this little helper that I have not really sorted out, because if we mint new supply, then here it is. We have this verify token account info, and I probably should specify this is more of the authority token account to verify, but we have the public key, the owner, which is the wallet, and the amount. But this amount is actually, this is a little tricky. This is tricky. The first time I do an initial mint, this would work just fine because it's the first time that ledger has been created, and therefore it's going to equal the mint supply raw. However, as soon as I start doing additional tests, such as creating a ledger, creating some entries, some debit, some credit entries, those sorts of things, and then, in creating other additional ledgers, this authority token account info is going to be hard to assert, hard to verify as is. I was just thinking I could apply this filter, keep track of it, get the total number. But say I've created 3 ledgers, which here I'm doing 1, 2, 3 separate ledgers. So I should technically have the mint supply raw times 3, which should also be, ledgers by authority after filtered should be 3. And I take that supply times 3, whatever that total is, and that should be the equivalent. But as soon as I start, adding, after that initial bit, after we do entries, then every time I create a new ledger afterwards, I come and do all this stuff. Wallet creates a few entries, and then sometime later, they come back and, await, handle, create entry, and we pass it some new, we do it again. This token account balance is going to be, it's going to vary. It's going to be based off of all these other previous transactions, and at least in our testing environment. But when it's in the front end, they're going to be possibly moving tokens from one wallet to another. I don't know why, but they could, because it's just an SPL token. So it's something to be mindful of. All of this is to say, this gets a little tricky to keep track of. I think if I were to do just 1, 2, 3, creating some ledgers, then that would be okay. But as soon as I add in something down here, after we've added entries to a couple of ledgers, and then we create another one, to do create another ledger to check. Then this will throw my current little helper off. This won't work because I'll need more information. I may need to adjust this to first do some sort of initial. I'm honestly not entirely sure how how to do that, because just up here, the total handle mint token supply helper has these. I wanted to add these verification checks, and kind of tuck them away. So that's a challenge. One idea, token account is going to be a little bit of a challenge anyway, regardless if I have some state account, like DApp token manager or profile, whatever. There's may need to add an additional step here where I may, kind of a fix me. Yeah, so verify token account helper. So this is something that I may need to modify, where basically, for example, we, grab the initial balance, then add this new amount to the initial balance, then pass the updated amount to verify token account info helper. It's kind of I'm just talking out loud here. So if this amount is really updated amount, let's see, we grab the token account info, which we just did at 2028. I wonder if I'm already going to grab the initial, if I'm going to grab the token account info here, then rather than passing the pub key and grabbing it again down here, better would be maybe just pass the entire account, and then I really wouldn't need this filter because I'd have the account. I've just grabbed it and passed in the amount, which it represents an updated amount. So then I'm talking out loud here, but then I could check that the account info, that the amount, that the supply that it has, the balance, is equal to the amount that I pass. That's really it. And then of course check that the account owner and whatnot. Talking through this makes me think that maybe I don't need this verified token account at all. What if I were to just make this verify? I'm not saying I will do this. I was trying, I want to keep it clean if I can. But if I do, what do we call this? So I could say, I already have the authority token account pub key. I could just call this authority token account info. Okay. And where are we getting? Changing this to the authority token account pub key, which we derived right at the very beginning. So this handle mint, we pass it a wallet and the amount. Right now, the amount, I'm just making it, I'm giving it an option if I wanted to change it up, but for right now, it's just using the standard supply. Okay, so say we get this. Just following my idea up here, grabbing the initial balance. So const current authority token account balance. Well, we have the account info already, so let's just do yeah, I'm wondering, what if, just to simplify it all, what if can I take these? Again, this is a work in progress, obviously. But just thinking, like, maybe I don't need this separate one because there's really no, I'm going to have to grab the token account. And then from there, make sure that that this new amount has been added. Okay, so if I do token account info, let's call this authority token account info, amount to equal amount, not times that. It's really just, in this case, it's amount plus what? Plus, oh wait. I guess I could do, I don't really need to, it just gets a little verbose. So if I do number authority expect, let's see, number to equal, I'm just spacing this out a little bit. So this would equal authority token account info amount, same kind of thing, number, it's probably a better way, plus amount, yeah, which is a number, which this is a number. Could we do that? So clean that up. So it's basically the original or current balance. Well, have we been minted? Oh, hold up. This just minted supply. So, I need to actually move this up. Man, it's a lot of, this reminds me of what I have with, yeah, this initial, it's the exact same kind of thing. Verify. When do I do this part? This is after a new entry, but it's like I need to verify this. It's very similar. It's very similar. Where I have and again, this is part of this is for my testing, obviously. But the big impetus for this was to clean up my testing. This is a lot easier to, I can add and just go through a whole sequence using helpers like this. This other approach where I'm a lot of copy pasting and redundancy, just it was getting too unwieldy. So the idea is to kind of tidy these up into some helpers, which the benefit of this is that I can have access to, these helpers. A lot of it I can reuse in the front end. So I can, continue to refactor and clean this stuff up and use these not only for tests, but part of it, a good chunk of it, I can add inside of the in Svelte as well. So yeah, all right, so here we are. I need to do this. So Again, this is verifying const initial authority token. Man, let's see, I've got initial. I have this elsewhere, yeah. Handle create entry. This is doing similar, something very, very similar, where we get although it's not dealing with the ledger, this time it's just dealing with the, so I'm going to just copy this because I already have it, and for consistency. So we would have the balance, the initial, go through, we create something. I'm going to grab the final after supply has been minted. Grab the initial, mint supply, grab the final balance. So this is what I've got. So here's the final balance, and what I can do is steal I've already done quite a bit of this, so I can do something like not ledger token account, but expect that I can use something like this. I believe I can use something like this. Now these are strings and such. I think maybe a little bit different, but yeah. So if I do final authority, now a balance, what's going to happen here is I'm going to have like access to, if I do final authority token balance, you'll see I have value, and then there's amount, which is a string, but it's the raw. Okay. So what I can do is final authority token account find B raw. I like distinguishing between that because there are differences. This is not the UI balance, but this is the, so we have the initial, we mint supply. After we mint, we verify, here we're verifying the mint supply, the total mint supply, which this one is much more easier because we're just keeping track of how much has been, what's the total supply out there with our DApp token mint. Well, that is that's a 1-to-1 every time you mint. Well, take the base amount that the supply that we mint times the number of total mints that we've done, and basically all the ledgers that we've created. And then that should work. But it's a little different when it comes to the user's token account. So we have raw balance, raw. Now this is a string, yeah, turning it into a number. And make sure that it's equal to the initial one, not minus, but plus, because we're minting supply. And what are we adding? We're doing the amount, yeah? So I feel as if this essentially does our test for us. Like that's the, yeah. Then add this new amount and yada, yada, yada. Now, what are we missing here? Token account owner. Oh, I don't have I have the balance. Ugh, lordy, this is not, it's not not what I want. Because I don't have the token account info, I just have the token account balance. Yeah, which means I need to I mean, I could change, if I do the get account, do I have an example of this? So if I come over here, that token mint authority, create ledger account, token account. I don't know if I have a log. Essentially, getting the account info versus the token balance is gives us some different. It gives us some different fields. So for now, I'm just gonna do it. So if I do authority token account info, and we do await get account, that's the retrieve information about a token account. We need the connection and the address. Well, that's easy. So the connection is provider.connection, and the address of this token account is our authority token account pub key, which we derive up here at the top. Yeah, way too many calls. I understand that. Way too many calls. I've got this token account raw balance. I probably could rework this where I just do the token authority token account info using get account instead of doing the balance, and just reworking these assertions. But for now, I want to just keep moving. So the owner, right? If I authority token account info and just show, like, look at all the stuff that you have. You have amount, which is, it's a big int. So it's not token account balance, which is gives you value, which then gives you like amount as a UI, as a string, but then it has UI amount. So it's a little bit different. Got examples all around, but just showing like there is a difference between. So we want to make sure that its owner is equal to, cannot find name owner. Did I change this? Yes, I did, because I am not using this helper is what I'm attempting. So find owner. Yeah, and rather than, it's going to be the wallet dot public key to base, and then the mint should be our DApp token mint. So here I am basically this after verify mint supply. I'm putting all of this here, where previously I had this helper verify token account info, and I could end up moving this stuff inside, and I may do that, but I'm just trying to get this to work. But I think my understanding of trying to use it as it was previously is not going to work, because again, as soon as you start creating ledgers and doing entries and stuff, I have to check an initial balance before we mint supply, and then the mint supply and then check the after, balance after the supply has been minted to the token account. Now, one thing that comes to mind is, what if it's the first time that they create a ledger? Because, see, it just gets complicated. What if it's the first ledger, therefore the first, and the wallet doesn't have the ATA yet. See? Because in our construction, or in instruction, if it's over here, what is this? Oh, sorry. Create ledger mint supply. We have the authorities token account. We're using the init if needed. Yeah. So if it's necessary, then we will mint or create a wallet. But this is right here. What I could do, deriving the associated token address for this wallet, that can be done. However, this, I may have to do a check, like if, if initial, or yeah, that's, I wonder if that would error out, I wonder if this would error out, because if there is, if this doesn't get anything, yeah. So I may need to consider wrapping some of this, or, if initial is 0, okay, we could see what value UI amount 0. Then what do we want? Yeah, I don't know if that's necessary. So I gotta test it out. So what I'm gonna do, anchor build, and there's really quite a lot happening here. So I've got, I get rid of just these two and just do a simple creating a ledger, making some entries, going back to what I know is working. Let me run this and just see. Yeah, see, I believe failed to get a token account balance, invalid param, could not find account. And I believe this is due to the fact, yeah, here, it stopped at the mint supply. And this is back to what I was just having my doubts. Oof. Yeah. Because again, the mint, how I currently have it as a separate instruction, this init if needed, yeah, only happens whenever we actually hit this instruction. But I don't know what that was about. Oh, sorry. The here, yeah. Ugh. How do you, so here's the thing, like, how many, we gotta check, like, does this account exist. It's going to error out if it doesn't. But the first time you create a ledger, of course you're not going to, but it will initialize that account as part of the instruction. And then this just, I can kind of feel myself going down a bad direction with this design, because we have, I need to know whether or not the user has an account. And I could wrap this maybe like in a try catch. Try catch finally. Like I still want, like if they try to get this and I get this error, that there no account exists. Okay. Not to completely crash the program, but to treat it like this is the first time, and so then it can continue minting the supply. But in terms of validating and verifying the amount token account balances afterwards, this gets a little trickier, because if this is the first time, they're getting minted supply and getting created their associated token account, and of course they're only going to have what is, minted, the mint supply raw. Yeah, I need to think on that. I'm just trying to think, what if I had, I'm going to have to check whether or not they have this account. So then it's kind of like, should I grab wallet token accounts? This just adds to the complexity of all this. What sort of existing token accounts does the wallet have? Or, if I had like a profile state account, so right now we just have ledger and escrow, or ledger and entry. But if I had maybe like another state account that's keeping track of like total ledgers by user, so this wallet would be associated with a kind of a profile state account or something like that. Then it would have a field, total number of ledgers, and then this would just be kind of like a, or, is it a if, user dot total ledger count equals 0, then, then initial or initial balance is 0, something like that. So yeah, something to consider. Yeah, so keep at it. After thinking about this a bit more, I feel like I don't need to be verifying the wallet's token account balance after every time, after minting supply. I just don't think it's, I think it just adds a lot of complexity. We certainly want to, after minting supply to the wallet, to the authority, I want to make sure that our token mint, its supply has increased accordingly. And I believe we can still do some checks. In my test, for example, since this is just a makeshift test, I could do some sort of expect, and then, the user for wallet or whatever, the user's token account balance equals, because it will be the very first time that token account gets created and therefore minted supply. So I could do a simple check right here after the first ledger is created, but then after that I don't ever check again. I just verify that this mint is legit. So what I think I'm going to do, for the sake of cleaning this up, is I know that there's a lot of I think what I could do is scrap it. Yeah, I think I'm going to scrap this idea. So instead of doing all this, I know I'm just going backwards here, but I think keeping it simple, and the reason why I'm not too concerned about verifying the token account balance for the user is because I do pretty much the exact thing when I create a new entry, be it a debit or credit. And so I have this helper that I already created that does this essentially after each and every entry that is created. So there's still validating and verifying amounts and such for my, for the user's token account balance, as well as the ledger's token account balance itself. So I think it's okay to scrap this idea. I am, for my notes, I'm going to leave this here. And instead, I'm going to, this is handling the mint, and it's just going to focus on handling the mint. So we're going to grab the associated token account. We passed in our accounts. I do have this new global to deal with, and this is something to keep in mind. It may need to, what about a DAP? What about another, high level state account, that tracks this. Something that I've done in the past for other projects, certainly could consider if necessary. But for now, just kind of keeping it simple. So every time that we actually mint, we do something like that. Same goes with like creating ledgers. I could keep track of ledgers created and whatnot. And we'll see. But for now, I'm just trying to stay focused on what I'm trying to do, which is implement this new mint that is using a PDA, as well as, my change to the token account, the ledger's token account itself also being a PDA. So kind of keeping focused on that for now. I'm going to delete this stuff. Here we're verifying all this. So what I had originally was, we started out here. The only real change that I've added that I think I'm going to keep is the global for this total mint count. That said, I think I'm going to rename this to be, I think I've got 2 instances. So we'll go verify. I'm going to change this to authority token account, because it just helps me differentiate between the authority's token account versus the ledger's token account. And what I do need to verify is still the same. So pass in the authority account, pub key, the wallet, and amount. Not so sure about the amount. Again, because this gets into the issue of, let's do update. And just going to verify the mint matches, and that's about it. I'm not going to bother with this amount, keeping track of the amount. Again, for what I've said, it's kind of hard to do. Now I could use this, like I said, anytime in my test, if I create a new ledger, note, so that's just something that could be considered. So, for example, in this case, the amount would be the mint supply raw, which is the default for, and I'm going to get rid of this. 21. Get rid of that. I'm just simplifying it, and I'm keeping the checks here. So yeah, so every time we get minted, it's the same amount, okay? But what is missing is obviously I need to grab the user's token account, yeah. And we do that where? Well, we do that right here. So I could do something like this. Token account pub key. We have the ledger's token account. It's a little bit of rework, but this is really only necessary for the very first ledger that they create, okay? And this is really just that, checking the very first time they create a ledger. After that, all the account balances and whatnot are checked for each entry that they create. So I don't think it's necessary to do so much. All right, so authority, rather than this, I'm going to call this change to team. Call this the user 4. I don't like all these numbers, or all these, this is kind of inefficient, but oh well. I'm going to, for now, stick to this. So I can get the user 4 address, and then I can use the user 4 token account pub key, grab that, and what else are we missing? Not pub key, info. Okay, so yeah, I feel we create our ledger, great. It's the very first one. And we perform this check. Afterwards, I should be able to check other ledgers, right? And this is, I checked my total mint count to make sure that that global is updating. And then you can go about doing other things, So as I mentioned, it would be great to, await, create, handle create ledger. Yeah, it's picking up. So I could do, this is something that, I may want us to start doing it. Const ledger 7 name. I could just do this stuff all right here. They don't need to be globals, but let's think of what are some other Mario related characters. We've got Peach and Bowser, Toad. I think I've got Luigi. Let me see. Because I have all these, this is just part of how my original, Mario, Luigi, Peach, Toad, Bowser, Goomba. I think there's like Capez or something like that. I'll have to look these things up, but we'll go with it for now. So then we create another one, and I should be able to do some new stuff, handle create, not ledger, handle create entry, and we specify the entry. So I could do I gotta derive the PDA and all that. Let me put a hold on this for just a second. I'll come back to this. This is still marked as to do. But if I do this, if I go back over here, and let's just see what kind of damage we've done. And this is why you write unit tests. This is definitely not test-driven development or anything like that. I don't do that, but I definitely, there's a place for tests, and the fact that it's kind of like your baseline to always come back to and make sure that your changes haven't broken anything. So as I showed earlier, this stuff was working. I've been experimenting and going through this little brainstorm, but let's see if I Solana logs, and now run. Hey, see? All right, this is a little bit of a sigh of relief. So we have trying to clean this stuff up, right? So starting with ledger 4, essentially, with the new user wallet, we have create a ledger. Okay. Oops. I'll scroll this way. So we create a ledger. We mint supply to that. We're using our new DApp token mint. And then we create another ledger. And we're minting some more supply, because every time we create a ledger, we're just embedding that, calling the mint supply inside of the handle create ledger, creating another one, minting more supply. So we can see that we've created 3 ledgers, we've minted 3 times, and our supply is growing. Okay. And the freeze authority on the same mint, it's all the same. Okay. So we have, so we have these supplies that are minted, and we're at this amount. Afterwards, we create our first entry. Okay, and it's a credit, and I have this test verifying token account balances. I could improve the logs, but the next entry is a debit, verifying that. Then there's a modify entry that's happening. Okay, and I'm just changing the name, and it's got updated. Okay, ledger balance is a type BN. We modify the second entry number, and then we close. We close this one, and when we close our ledger, we take the amount from the ledger and transfer it to the authority token account. And I've done tests on this stuff in the past anyway, but it should be working. So we've only created some ledgers. Yeah. But after a couple of entries, where am I at? After a couple of modifications, we close it. I'm going to go check out this close for a second. So we pass in the ledger, the pub key of the ledger, and the wallet that's in charge. We grab the ledger account that we're talking about. We grab its initial balance. We grab the authority's initial balance. We go through and we close all that. And when we grab the final, and this is test from in the past, but essentially we're checking that the ledger is truly closed, which is what this handy helper does for us, because we know that it's going to error. And then we check that our final balance is equal to whatever our account, our token authority's token account balance was previously before we did the close instruction, and then grabs all the tokens that were initially in the ledger's token account balance and adds them back, which brings it right back to, in our test, we saw that it's got a balance amount of this 30,000, which makes sense because it's created 3 ledgers. It made some entries, for sure. It created some entries on that one, on the first ledger. But then after we close the ledger, all that money comes back. So, yeah. So that's working. So this is cool. Just kind of talking through it. I feel like that's easier to do. And what's great is that this checked out. This initial, the very, very first time you create a ledger, you have to perform this check. Every subsequent time, not necessary, really. And that's cool. Yeah. One of the things that, and again, it's just about kind of how you design and do this, but I have, if I wanted to create, if I do some of this stuff and then I just to create another ledger here, and I don't know if it's really necessary to do that right now, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, so this is looking better. I think that I was trying to do too much with the handle Mint supply. I'm glad for these helpers repping it up into this stuff. It just seems to be a little bit cleaner and easier to do these tests. The same amount of code almost. I mean, I guess simplified is the code for sure. I've only had to write this stuff out once, but so I'm liking that. It's still quite a bit of refactoring I could do, but at least this is working. One thing that I don't have is, where's my handle create ledger? Oops. Right here. One of the things that I have here that I've often thought about maybe changing is that in my program instruction, I don't have to really pass anything. I just need the wallet. I just need the authority to be able to do that, along with the ledger name. Anchor, because of the seeds and the way that in Anchor init, it's going to do all the PDA derivation for me, and it's going to store the bump and whatnot on my ledger account. That's just because that's what we've told it to do here in the here. Okay, and same goes with the token account bump. Yeah, because I've changed the ledger's token account to also be a PDA. And our validation struct has it does this all for us thanks to init. So my point is I don't have to really pass a whole lot of stuff here. And one thing that I noticed when trying to do my tests is, now that I've got a unit test or an individual test, I still need access to the actual ledger's PDA and the ledger's token account PDA. I need access to those because when I later use, when I need to, for example, create ledgers or create entries, I need this pub key again, and to modify the entry again, I need the entries PDA. So there's a little bit of, do I derive the PDAs like this and then pass that? Do I change this function signature to where I'm passing the PDAs for the ledger and the token account? Because I still, part of the testing, as part of the checks, I need to verify that, everything went well. Or do I keep it isolated as I currently have here? but then that means inside of my handle create entry, for example, which is where right here, do I need to, if I wanted to handle create entry, I still, yeah, like, I need to give that to it. I need to pass this ledger's pub key. So a little bit of a ramble there. My bad, but this is just kind of part of the design considerations as I'm thinking through this. So yeah, let me see if I can, if I wanted to create, and I tell you what, let me clean up some stuff. Okay, so I cleaned it up. What I did is deriving the PDAs for each ledger that I create, throw in a couple of other expect checks, assertions, as well as I moved all the ledger names inside here. So what we've got is still creating some ledgers, creating some entries, and whatnot, and closing some ledgers. And I think we're getting there. So what I'm going to do, I've got the validator running. We're just going to run the test. Yeah, and it's looking like, so you have, if you check it out here, I've created another ledger, and I gave it 2,000 tokens, but then I closed my ledger, a different ledger, which then returned all of its tokens back to my account. So what I'm left with is a final authority token account balance of, I've created 4 ledgers, so it's been minted 4 times, which would be 40,000, but I currently have 2,000 that I credited to a new this ledger with this single entry here. So I think we're looking okay. I feel pretty good about this. I think it's time to now really move this into these changes into the front end. If I look at all my previous tests that before this refactor, I have creating a ledger. That's done. Creating another ledger with the same wallet. We've done that. And look at just all this code. Let's see. Creating an entry or a credit entry inside of a ledger. I've done that. A debit entry. I have done that. I did that right here. So I've got a credit and a debit. Those two are done. Let's see what else. I have a modify of an entry, the memo. Did that a couple times here. Modified both. Create a credit and then close. I've done that. I've done that once. I mean, it's just a bunch of stuff. One thing I could do is I have this check going on for the close, but one thing that comes to mind is the insufficient. So insufficient funds. So hang on. So Mint, this is kind of when I started experimenting with the DApp token Mint. So yeah, so really, in essence, I have created what I've kind of replicated all of that, all of this code, all of this, and simplified it into this one block, and I'm happy with that. I'm I'm happy with the refactor. I think it certainly helps, and I probably could revise some of my front end logic that I use. So I think for future, this is a big learning for me. Is just, if I can make my tests first, build my helper methods, and then run my tests. I think that would be more efficient, and I could probably reuse a good part of the code. I mean, I'm still reusing code in the SvelteKit app, but probably a lot of redundancy and overlap, so could simplify my process moving forward. But I have them all. And one thing I would like to do is, I believe I probably should do one more test. Just separate, confirm that insufficient funds error works. Yeah, so I feel, where I try to, I could do const ledger. I don't even need this. Just do await handle create ledger, and I just do no money. No money error. What else do I need in this thing? I need the wallet. Could try just using my user4 wallet. Okay, but this as is, this will mint supply. Okay, but then where I try to do create or handle create entry, and I'll do this real quick and then come back, but basically create the entry and confirm that I can get it to error with my custom insufficient funds. If I'm trying to, what I mean is, like, I try to do a debit right away from the ledger, but the ledger doesn't have any money. The ledger's token account doesn't have any money. The user's wallet, the authority's token account, has money because I mint the supply to the wallet, but this ledger doesn't have any funds yet until the user supplies it with some money. But if I try to mistakenly do a debit, this should generate that custom error that we created earlier. So I'll do that real quick. But then, yeah, I think we're heading over to the front end. So I went back and did a quick change. And previously, I worked on this utility function using Chai to basically test that a asynchronous function would throw an error. So I used it particularly for when I close a ledger, that I wanted to make sure that when I try to perform a fetch, that for sure I know it will throw an error, and I want to be able to verify that and catch that with an expect. And so I have this helper. This was from a previous way back. That was a fun education. Learned a lot. But one of the things that we do is that you pass it an optional error message that you want to check against. I originally had just this line. So expect that the error message that is actually the real error message that is caught is equal to the error message that I pass into this helper function. That worked just fine for my closing the ledger situation, and because the error message just was nice and short and clean like this. It said account does not exist or has no data, and then it listed out the pub key of the account. So I could do something simple like this. However, what I've done is I've added, rather than doing a separate individual test, I was like, well, let me just try to perform something that shouldn't work. I've already created a ledger 6, but I have not performed any sort of entries yet. This would be the very first entry for this particular ledger. Same wallet, but this time I'm trying to take money out of the ledger token account using a debit entry, and taking out 500, and I want it to have the error message. Well, long story short, this was the error message. It was quite long. It says anchor error thrown in programs, and it has the list. It has the file path, and then there's this error code. Error code insufficient funds does come from my custom for my program. This is what I created when doing this, and so you can see that there's a lot to it. And if I go back and I wanted to use this helper as it originally was, I couldn't have it equal to the error message. It would be, doesn't make sense to pass in the path to my file and the line number and all. It just doesn't make sense. So instead, I looked around in the Chai documentation, and long story short, they have a contain helper. So when it does throw an error as expected, we catch the error. We catch the error and we set it to our variable that we're keeping track of called error. And then I'd verify that it is an instance of error and all that. And then the message that is returned from the actual error, I want to make sure that it at least contains my error message. So this makes my helper just a little bit more flexible, so I can pass in at least just a portion of the error message. So I know in this case that it should return error code : insufficient funds, which it does, part of my testing. So after doing all of that, I had it run and it passes just fine. But let me run it one more time. I've already booted up I thought it did. Yeah. So what I can do is rerun it one more time. This error pops up because my validator has already created these PDAs. So it's like this account already exists. You can't recreate it, right? And the logs get going, and then we'll run the test. And so here you'll see that by swapping to contains and then the custom error message that we want to pass, it works for both when closing the ledger as well as the trying to debit a ledger token account that does not have enough balance. So yeah, pretty cool. And now, truly, I think it's time to implement and update the front end with all of these changes, because there's been quite a few, and so I need to make sure that keep the front end program working as expected. So let's do that.